And look, just before we go to the male panel, just on this green energy stuff, I know Matt Keane, he is green, who's the New South Wales Environment Minister, tipped in $65 million of your money into a green scheme to roll out solar panel batteries to 300,000 households in New South Wales. The public are awake up to this rubbish. Quote, to transition to a cleaner energy future, as if we all want a dirty one. And quote, to meet our target of net zero emissions by 2050, which means none of us will be able to breathe. Anyway, 300,000 households, I don't think 150 people have signed up to date. You just shake your head in disbelief. Let's go to the panel. Chris Minns, a prominent figure in New South Wales Labor, and Gareth Ward, a minister in what is a very troubled Berejiklian government. Can I just challenge you both? And I know Chris wants to quote a whole lot of international figures which bear no relationship to what is happening, and I won't dwell on this tonight, but I've argued we're not being told the truth over this coronavirus business. And I mentioned tonight significant research which has been published by the New York Times from Massachusetts, New York and Nevada, which found that up to 90% of people testing positive carry barely any virus. Now, I'm not going to go to the debate about that. I'm just going to ask you first, Chris, because we've allowed fear to overtake us. Do you concede that reporting the number of cases is rubbish, other than to justify the draconian behaviour of politicians? And why aren't the public told? Whether you agree with what this New York Times story has said, shouldn't the public be told this stuff? Chris?
Well, yeah, I think, Alan, the public should be told everything. The reports, the scientific breakthroughs, everything should be reported. I've said on your program, I've completely acknowledged that a young person is something like 10,000 times less likely to die from the disease as someone who's 75 years old. The 1 in 100 mortality figure, I guess it depends whether you're in the 1% or not. The only point I've ever made on this program and elsewhere is that if you let the disease rip and you saw a massive increase like we saw in India, where they had 87 cases in April and 93,000 yesterday, then it would destroy your economy. No one would go out. And that has to be part of the conversation about the economy and how we deal with our community.
But, Gareth, can I come to you? This alarmism has really got me. People are genuinely frightened. People have been locked up in Melbourne like battery hens. Kids have had their education year destroyed. And it's clear now that excess deaths, I mentioned these suicide figures before, the deaths of other conditions, and there's this research, this is not Alan Jones, cancer, diabetes, obesity, mental illness, which haven't been treated, so people have died, and there are more deaths from those causes than from coronavirus. When are politicians going to tell the public the truth, Gareth?
Well, good evening, Alan. And look, I've got to call a spade a shovel here. When it comes to this stuff, you could either lock down everything, which I don't think anyone wants to do, and we've certainly seen the impacts of that. If you open everything up, you also have adverse consequences as well too. And I think regardless of what we do, we're going to be criticised here, and that's fine. People should be held to account.
That's not true, Gareth. Gareth, it's not true.
Alan, it is true.
Now, Gareth, I'm not going to let you tell a viewing audience here untruths. Now, you say open it up, and you've got these dreadful consequences. Now, France have opened it up. There are any number of increases in coronavirus cases, any number of increases. But
well, actually, Alan, France and Belgium...
No increases in deaths. Because the coronavirus is not the virulent thing that everybody makes it out to be and frighten the tripe out of everyone. But I promised I wouldn't go on with this. I want to ask you both about the hospitality sector. Now, Gareth, can you please explain to people in the hospitality sector why it's one person every 4 square metres, or why there's a cap of 150 people? Now, you're in the government. Why can people dance and hold hands, but they can't kiss, they can't sing, they can't stand up? Can you put a piece of paper on you've got a law degree. Can you put a piece of paper which provides the evidence that justifies those measures? Where is it? Can you send it to me?
Well, Alan, you know my region quite well. You know, I've got a lot of hospitality businesses in my electorate. I'm certainly concerned about them, and I know that that there could have been far worse consequences for many of those businesses if we'd gone down a much stricter path. But no one wants this situation, Alan. There's no how-to guide to any of this. But
we've just got an economist who's resigned from the Victorian Treasury because he argues that the public weren't being told the truth. I'm simply saying to you as a lawyer, can you send me tomorrow the evidence which justifies why you are doing what you are doing?
Well, a lot of this, Alan, is all about risk appetite. And
no, just making it up as you go along.
No, that's not right. When we get the advice from health officials, and, you know, who do you get advice from?
It's advice.
When it comes to things like this, you seek... That's right. And we get triage,
well, that's all it is.
median and low
Put it
risk,
in the
and you
bin.
make decisions based on the best advice available to you at the time.
Why don't you get a bit of international advice, which contradicts local advice? Chris, can I just come to you? The Sydney International Convention Centre, this is where we are, has stood down 2/3 of its staff. The events industry's crippled. And it usually hosts 700 events, concerts, balls, galas, exhibitions and so on. It'll run 100 in the second half of 2020. Chris, do we just allow this stuff to go on?
No, you're right. There is a very strong case to lift the restrictions that are on weddings and convention centres to the same number as pubs and clubs. Some of these convention centres are the same size as RSLs and clubs in any event, and they're going out the door backwards. And Alan, I've got to tell you, I spoke to Daltone House over the last 2 weeks, a massive employer in southern Sydney. They're going out the door backwards. All their suppliers, their contractors, their staff, their cookers, their cooks, their cleaners, they can't operate under the current restrictions. They're desperately trying to get through to the New South Wales government to change it. There's a strong case for it, and the government's got to listen.
Yeah, I mean, coming back to you, Gareth, and I know Gareth's highly intelligent and very articulate, but you take the Tamworth Music Festival, and the council said, this is in January, for God's sake, it's iconic, it's an emblem of country life, and they said, we cannot operate under the Berejiklian restrictions, so we're going to have to close it now because there's no evidence that those restrictions are going to change. Do you take anywhere? Does someone get at the cabinet room and say, this stuff's rubbish, it's got to stop?
Well, Alan, we asked lots of questions of the health advice and the health officials, and I'm sure that if Chris was in government, they would be asking questions of their health officials, as we are too, and we challenge them. I know I do. I know that many of my cabinet colleagues, including the health minister, does. But we also need to work with those experts, those people that understand.
They're not experts, Gareth.
This particular virus.
Excuse me, but do you ask?
Alan, can I also
make
the point?
Hang on. Do you ask the health advisors what their qualifications are to give this epidemiological advice? They don't have qualifications.
And some of these people have the best qualifications in this state of any state. I'd simply say to you, Alan, someone who you and I are mutual admirers of, Boris Johnson. He's now providing for on-the-spot fines in London. They're worried about a second wave. We've charted a middle course in many cases in states across Australia, and we have to, because we don't want to open everything up or lock everything down.
So we keep going the way we are. Just final word to you, Chris. We keep going the way we are. I mean, why don't politicians cop the same medicine as these poor people who are out of a job, no money, and you blokes keep full freight?
Well, it's devastating. I've said it before. I've seen the impact in people coming into my electorate office, my wife's business, a fledgling small business. It's impacting every part of the economy. Look, the budget comes down in November. I'm praying there's some tax cuts and some stimulus to pick the economy up because things are extremely grim out there at the moment. It
is. OK, you've got to go. But, Gareth, can I just plead with you to use your rhetorical skills to argue in that cabinet room that this cannot go on, Gareth. It just can't go on the way we are. We're denied 99% of these cases are mild. 99.75 recover. Why doesn't Gladys Berejiklian and Anastasia Palaszczuk Andrews stand in the public place and tell people that and dismantle the fear? We can't go on the way we are.
I don't expect everyone to agree with every decition that we're making, but I think in many respects we're doing the best that we can. I know that'll be open to conjecture, but I think we're doing well.
Oh, my God. I wouldn't give you 5 out of 10, Gareth, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that next week.